Hello, everybody. Good morning if you're on the West Coast. Good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. If you have the ability to turn your cameras on, we'd love to see your beautiful faces. We're going to get started. This is definitely a pen and paper kind of training. So make sure you have something to take some notes. Something magical happens when we go pen to paper or Apple Pencil to iPad, and we actually write stuff down. I feel like it's kind of a lost art in today's digital world. This is a good one. I'm here to, yes, help you make an impact. I feel like I always have to bring that up anytime we're talking about money. Like I don't know, like you're not supposed to talk about money. If you own a business, you got to talk about money. We got to talk about increasing revenue. And yes, that's not the only thing we're doing, right? We want to make a big impact. We wouldn't have opened up our martial arts schools otherwise, but we can make a bigger impact if we have a bigger bank account, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I want to give you a heads up. We're going to have to do a little math today. So maybe get a calculator ready. It's just division, right? Yeah, I think it's just going to be some addition and division. So very basic, no calculus or anything like that. But math is the path. And I think when we do this exercise, it's going to give you some clarity on really where the focus needs to be in how you're going to increase your revenue. Hello, Miss Jen. Hello, Miss Grace. All right, let's get the party started. So in the chat, guys, if you've ever been on any of my webinars, I ask you to get in the chat. It's a feedback loop for me. It keeps you more engaged. It keeps you present. If we had to compare like recruiting versus retention efforts, okay, so think about the effort that you put in towards recruiting and the effort that you put in towards retention. Out of 100%, would you say that's like a 50-50 split? Is it a 60-40 split, 70-30 split, 80-20 split? What would you say is the split of percentage with your focus recruiting versus retention? Let me know in the chat. Think about that, marinate on that. What is it? So 80% recruiting and 20% retention. That's an example. All right. Miss Chapman says 50-50. All right. What do we got? 80-20 in the past. So pre-2025, 80% recruiting, 20% retention. 2025 focus is 50-50. Awesome. Miss Smith says 70-30. I don't know. Something just happened to my camera. Hold on one second, guys. I got to let some people in here as well. Let's see. All right, that camera this one's just going to have to do. Don't know what happened to the other one. Okay, 30% recruiting, 20%, 70% retention. Okay, as you'll kind of see, guys, the majority is we shift heavier towards recruiting, right? And we think that is like the, point A to point B in terms of increasing your revenue. And it's not the only way. It's part of the way, but it's not the only way. Yes, we will get a recording out, Mr. Young, before the end of the day. So I want to thank you guys for investing your time with me here today. It's a brand new year. Hopefully you have some really big goals, and it's an honor to help you achieve them. I guess last Friday was National Quitters Day. I didn't even know that was a thing. I guess the second Friday of each year is National Quitters Day. And I guess it's just because it's like, all right, you got through the first weekend of your New Year's resolution, and now you're heading into the second weekend. And oftentimes what happens is we pat ourselves on the back and we're like, you know what, I've done this already. And then we step back, and we don't want that to be us. And if you guys are on this call, then you're certainly not quitters. So the mission today is to just simplify the process of increasing your revenue in your school through a 4-step framework. Let's engage fully, take notes, ask questions, also be open to new ideas, and don't be a consistent person without any results. Now, I've been in the martial arts industry since I was 8 years old. Started working at the school as soon as they could at 15 as a paid instructor, was kind of volunteering before then. Been general manager, opened my own school. So I've been in the industry for a while, and especially once I became a school owner, learning and continuous growth was really important. So I made sure to go to events and hop on webinars and seminars and things like that. And sometimes people get into this kind of rhythm of like, okay, I'm going to be on every webinar or master class. I'm going to go to all of the events, but they're in the same exact spot that they were the year before. So don't be a consistent person without any results, which just means we've got to take action. All right. The majority of focus, which we saw in the chat when I asked you, what was your percentage split of focus for recruiting versus focus for retention? The majority of school owners put new students, right? I mean, it's the number one question we get as consultants. I've got Mr. Klingenmeyer's on. He's a Maya consultant. And I'm going to ask him a couple questions here in a minute, but I know that if I asked him, like, sir, what's the number one question that your clients are asking? It's always about new students, right? It's always about new students. And what we have to remember is, yes, we need new students, but acquiring new students has a cost. New customers in every business has a cost. And that is called your CAC, C-A-C, cost of acquisition. And if you do not know what your cost of acquisition is, you need to figure that out. And the way that you figure that out is you add up all of the money that you are spending on marketing, right? So if you hired GrowPro, your service fee, any ad spend, if you're printing flyers, if you're donating money to partners in education, whatever you are spending money on to acquire new customers, and you divide it by the amount of customers you get in that month. And that is going to give you your cost of acquisition. In some cases, you could even include, if you have somebody that only focuses on sales, their salary could be included on that cost of acquisition. But when you know your cost of acquisition, if it's costing you $100 to get a new student or $150, that one tells you when you're going to actually start making money. In some cases, you might not make money until, the first full month goes through and you get that kind of next payment. But there is a cost to constantly trying to increase the number of students you have. And it's just not the only way to increase our revenue. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out what your revenue ceiling is. And I did a presentation back, I want to say over 2 years ago at MyaCon on this revenue ceiling formula. And if you did it then, you should do it again because this changes. But if you know these four numbers, the number of customers, the number of students, the number of new customers that you get each month on average, your average student value per month, and the percentage of churn. So your attrition, how many students you are losing in a percentage. Okay, so we need to know those numbers. Hopefully these numbers are something you are looking at a weekly basis. And it's something that if you're not looking at it a weekly basis, you could at least go into your spreadsheets or CRM to go and grab this information. Just curious, in the chat, do you have these four numbers? Like, one, them off the top of your head, or two, like, yeah, a couple of clicks, I can go grab them. Let me know yes or no in the chat. Mr. Meyer says yes. Thank you, sir. So number of students, the new students per month, the average student value, and the percentage of churn. Okay, I can get them. Yes, yes. Okay. So here's the formula. And what this is going to tell you is where your revenue is capped. And it's kind of crazy how accurate that it can be. So if you know your student value and you can divide it by your average monthly churn, if you're losing 5% or 4% or 3%, what this does is it gives us a lifetime customer value. And I want you guys to write down this formula that's down here on the bottom, okay? And then once you know your lifetime customer value, you can multiply it by the average number of new students you're getting per month and this is going to give you what your revenue ceiling is. Okay. So anytime we're talking math, I think it's important that we put factual, actual, like examples and numbers. I'm a visual person. I need visuals when especially we are talking numbers. Okay. So the formula is at the top if you were unable to write it down again. Okay. So here is an example. Let's say a school has $185 student value. Okay. And how do you get your student value? Take your revenue, divide it by your active count. That's your student value. Okay. So if the school has $185 student value, and let's say they had a 5% attrition or churn. Attrition and churn, we use those terms, they mean the same thing interchangeably. So if I had a 5%, I would just divide it within its decimal format. So 0.05, okay? And that's going to give me the lifetime value. So in this example, $185 student value divided by 5% churn gives me a $3,700 lifetime value. Now, I'm going to take that lifetime value that we just calculated, and let's say I'm averaging about 8 new students a month. This is going to give me what my revenue ceiling is, $29,600. Okay, so this is an example for a school. And if you have your numbers now, I'd love for you to do it. If you don't have your numbers, that's going to be part of your action step. So let me give you a real life example of one of our Maya Elite clients. Okay, they had $159 student value with a 4.5% attrition. Okay, the average in the martial arts industry is 5%. Okay, when you start creeping above 5%, alarms are going off that you're having trouble retaining your students. So with $159 student value and a 4.5% churn, that gave them a $3,533 lifetime value. Now we take that lifetime value and they're averaging 9 new students a month. So this tells us that their revenue ceiling is $32,800. Okay. Now let this kind of blow your mind. Their actual revenue was $32,536. It's kind of crazy how the formula will show you exactly where you're capped out, and they've been capped out. They've been really struggling to increase the revenue. So let's take this example. And yes, of course, we want to get more new students. Like 9 is a solid amount, right? But I know a lot of school owners, and just depending on the size and capacity of your school and your team, that are wanting double digits, multiple double digits. Let's not even worry about adding any more time, energy, and money into getting more students. And let's just lower our attrition by 1% from 4.5 to 3.5, from 4.5 to 3.5. Just by lowering 1% of their churn, this now brings their lifetime value up to $4,500. And without signing up any additional than the 9 they've been averaging, this brings their monthly revenue ceiling up to $40,885, which is an $8,000 per month increase. And if we average that over the course of an entire year, it's nearly 6 figures that they are adding to their bottom line. And I know when I've showed this formula to some people, like you see kind of these light bulbs go off on the importance of shifting the focus solely from new students to retention, because a 1% deduction in your churn rate could literally be adding tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, to your bottom line. And that should get you really excited, because retention doesn't cost your business nearly as much as acquiring new students. Okay. Everybody following me so far? Like, give me a yes or a no in the chat. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? I know when sometimes we talk math, can see that meme with like all the formulas going on. All right. Yes, yes, yes. Good stuff. Okay. So you need to figure out what your revenue ceiling is. And then, well, okay, Chris, I know the number. If your current revenue is close to that ceiling, the best thing for you to do is going to be to lower your attrition, as it's the easiest and most cost-effective way to increase your revenue. For some reason, people don't really tie in lowering attrition to increasing revenue. It's just as sexy as getting new students, okay? If your current revenue is higher than the ceiling, then your revenue is eventually going to drop. And if your current revenue is lower than the ceiling, then you still have some room for growth, okay? So you've got the formula. You can grab the numbers. You can plug it in. We'll send these slides to you with the recording. So if you want to go back and you want to just double check your math and everything, you'll be able to do that. But increasing revenue isn't solely tied to new students. And we've got to shift the focus from, 70% on recruiting and 30% on retention. And I loved I don't remember who someone said it. Someone said 100% on recruiting and 100% on retention. I love that mindset, right? We're going to go all in on both. But typically, we have a tendency to lean towards one side or the other, okay? So if you are at your revenue ceiling, in order to break through that ceiling, it's 4 things. You can get more students, you increase the student value, you reduce your monthly churn, or you raise your rates. Like, that's it. I'm trying to make this the concept as simple as possible. Get more students, increase the student value, reduce the monthly churn, raise your rates. Okay? All right, well, how do I do that? That's exactly what this session is all about. So to drive home the point a little bit more, let's say a school has 100 students and each is paying $150 per month. And let's say the average student stays on for about 10 months. And guys, I really hope that your CRM has the capability to track how long people are staying. And if you know that there's a specific time period where drop-off is occurring, like the majority of our cancellations are coming at this month or this month or this month. Well, now you can go back to the customer journey and see, well, what's going on in their martial arts journey that they're dropping off at month 4 or month 6 or month 10. And now you've diagnosed that and you can fix it, okay? But in this example of 100 students paying $150 and they last 10 months, that gives you $150,000 in revenue. And if we can improve in each area just 10%, increase the number of students by 10%, increase the monthly tuition by 10%, increase the average length of stay by 10%, it's actually a 33% increase. And that school goes from making $150,000 to nearly $200,000, okay? And again, the issue goes to the majority of the focus is just on this one right here, which is increasing the number of students, okay? You're not gaining leverage if you're just focusing on that one puzzle piece, okay? So increase number of customers, right? And each one of these could be mini trainings, but what I'm trying to share with you are the things that I think are the most impactful out of all of these, okay? So number one, and this does not cost you any money, right? Which is just in order to increase the number of customers, we've got to increase our leads. That's it, right? We want more customers, we get more leads, we get more appointments, we get more shows. That ends up getting us more customers. What I have seen is that the biggest issue with referral programs is that they're just not known by everybody in the academy. And I have talked to many, school owners like, oh, do you have a referral program? And they're like, yeah. And it's like, well, is it visual? Like, do you have posters up on the wall? Do you have a prize wheel up on the wall? Are you handing out like guest passes? And it's usually like there's a referral program, but the student body doesn't really know about it. Okay. So you need to make it visual, and you should have a poster. We do. We have a giant poster in our school that has the information on our referral program. What you give as prizes is completely up to you. I like things that I like systems that we can highlight in front of everybody. And I think this is why the prize wheel is kind of the best route to go for the referral program. We got one for like $30 off of Amazon. We literally screwed it into the wall. And that wall is right where we do our mat chats and where the lobby is, so that the parents can see it and the kids can see it. And during the mat chat, if a student has referred another student that enrolled in a 12-month program, because we do 12-month programs. We're not having them spin the wheel for, like if a friend came in for a trial, they get to spin the prize wheel. What's on it? Cash is king. So money, pro shop credits, and Amazon gift cards. And if you don't maybe have that extra income to do that, you could offer private lessons. You could offer, free merch, but people get really excited when you hand them a $50 bill or $75 or $100. Okay. So got to have a referral program. It needs to be known by all. And you got to build it into your sales system. You got to build it into your onboarding system. So when you are going through the sales process, something that is really easy, and I know Mr. Klingenmeyer actually has like people write down referral names while they're in the sales onboarding process, but asking them like, who referred you, and just assuming who referred you. And they might say, oh, well, we actually found you on Google. It opens up the conversation to say, oh, well, a lot of our students are actually referred to by other members. We have a referral rewards program. And now that opens up the conversation for you to talk about it. Okay. In your onboarding, when somebody becomes a new student, if you offer a new student packet, right? We have this like 30-page full color booklet that we give to them that just has all of our rules and policies and everything somebody would want to know. You could put the information in there. If you want to save money on printing, you can put it in an email automation. So they get an email once a week, maybe for the first 90 days of them becoming a new member, and talk about things like your referral program. Okay. And then it's got to be tangible. It's got to be physical, where you can actually give them guest passes. All right. So increasing the leads, referrals really isn't going to cost you anything. Then partners in education. And I wanted to bring Mr. Klingenmeyer on for a second on this, because he rocks this area. And again, guys, there is a plethora. There is a long list we could be talking about in order to how can we generate more leads. I want to focus on the things that I believe move the needle the most. And this one is the partners in education play. And it's hard work. Like anybody that tells you it isn't hard work, it's lying. It can take, just depending on your area, it might take weeks to develop the relationship. It might take months. It might take years to develop that relationship. But you have to go in with the mindset of providing value first. And the way that we do it is we have a partners in education packet where we go to the school and we ask them, how can we help you? How can we support you? So, Mr. Klingenmeyer, you are a king at this process. I know you've donated like tens of thousands of dollars to your local school. Can you just kind of, and also from a consultant standpoint, because you consult a lot of school owners, why do you think schools aren't going this route?
I think it's because we don't like being told no, and we know the impact that we can make, and that we make daily, weekly, monthly with all of our own students. And we walk into a building and say, hey, look, we can do X, Y, and Z. And they give you the cold shoulder, and people get discouraged. And it's kind of like when you bop a dog on its nose too many times, well, it's going to be afraid of your hand. It's kind of the same thing. We don't like getting bopped on our nose all the time. And even though we know the benefit that we provide.
And would you agree that partners in education, if somebody is interested in increasing their customers, they're getting new students, that this is probably one of the like highest leverage activities they could be doing in their school?
It really is, because you're not only doing something great for your own school, where you're getting in front of your audience and getting people into your martial arts school, and just giving them the opportunity to enroll if they want to. If you did your job right and they had a great experience, yeah, they might want to keep going, or maybe they won't. But you'll never know if they're not in there. But as far as a mass enrollment opportunity to enroll 7, 10, 20 people, I do believe I have the record. I know I have the record in Maya. I might have the record industry-wide. 62 people in one day on 12-month programs. One day, 12-month programs, and I
Huge.
didn't discount anything. Okay, so it works. It really,
Yes.
really does.
This is the way. Thank you so much for sharing, sir.
But
And I'm not trying to pitch Maya or anything. Well, I mean, maybe I am, but I think Maya is the best at this process. And this is an actual screenshot of the Partners in Education packet that you can print out and actually bring to the school. And the mistake that most people make when they go to develop these relationships is they're trying to ask, like, what can I get out of this, and showing up to the school and saying, hey, can you pass out these flyers? Like, what can you do for my martial arts school? And it's just not the way you build the relationship. It's got to be, what can you do for the school? And these are just some of the ideas, whether that's donating school supplies, donating a breakfast for the staff, being a bus ramp volunteer, being a PE teacher for the day, doing motivational speeches. This is just a relationship that, if you maintain it, will continue to give back and give back and give back. All right. So third thing I want to talk about in terms of increasing customers is online ads, right? I own a digital marketing agency. I do believe that with the proper strategy, this can become a great, a great way to increase your leads, appointments, and your new students. But you have to have a great offer. What you have to remember, especially with Facebook ads, like, people aren't going on Facebook to find, like, martial arts. They're going on because they want to be entertained. They want to catch up with people. And we're really kind of planting the seed to see if they're interested. So you got to give them a reason to actually want to pull the trigger. And that starts with a great offer, and it has to have some form of urgency on it. Okay. The other thing that we have to remember is I was, I was just, so my wife and I, we do a budget meeting every single month. And over the last year or so, our grocery budget has increased quite a bit. Anybody else? Grocery budget increased quite a bit. And, I think that we all understand, maybe from like a personal standpoint, that yes, things are more expensive, but we don't think about that in our business, and we also don't think about it in its growth. And one of the mistakes that I have made, even with growing GrowPro, is not, like, in the beginning. I think when you're smaller and you're just getting started, you're willing to take like bigger risks. But as the thing grows, and as you have maybe more people that your company is supporting, sometimes your risks don't grow with the growth. And that was a mistake that I made. I was spending the same amount in marketing when we were at a much lower revenue mark than when we were at a much higher revenue mark. And oftentimes people's budget does not increase. Their marketing budget doesn't increase with the growth of the business. So if you're still spending what you were spending when you were doing $10,000 a month and you're at $30,000 a month, you got to rethink that. And also, if you're still spending what you were spending back in 2020 versus now 5 years later, you got to rethink that as well. You got to have speed to lead and fortune in the follow-up with Facebook ads. And you should be using AI tracking through Meta Conversions API. This is a newer release that the Facebook Ads Manager put out. And without getting like super techie on you, what it does is it optimizes the ads for appointments and enrollments as opposed to just leads, right? How many of you ever got a lead from Facebook and you maybe call them and they're like, I don't know who you are. And it's just because the campaigns are optimized to find people that are going to be willing to give you your contact information. Well, we don't want to optimize for that. We want to optimize for appointments and enrollments, people that are actually booking appointments and enrollments. And this is something that we've been rolling out to our clients at GrowPro. It is a monstrous project to do this. But if you are running Facebook ads with another agency, I would ask them to see if they can help set up it's just called the Meta Conversions API. Okay. And this is really going to help just bring in a higher quality lead. And again, it's a much newer feature that has been released into the Facebook ads library. Okay. So the second thing, the first thing we can do to increase our customers is to increase our leads, right? And we just went over 3 different ways. The second thing that you can do is enhance and train the enrollment process. Okay. And I know some schools really knock this out of the park. The CMA schools over in Orlando under Nick Peterman, they're training 3 times a week. 3 times a week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they are doing staff training. And I think for most schools, even doing once a week isn't occurring. And if you want to increase your customers, if you can get your people better at selling or getting yourself better at selling, that's going to help you bring in more customers. So this is really where weekly role playing comes in. And one of the, I'm curious, put program director in the comments if you have like, or if you have like a front desk person or a program director, you put PD in the comments if you have somebody else that's selling for you. Meaning you're not involved in the enrollment process, like you're not actually taking the credit card or getting them to sign. All right. So we got quite a few. I'm going to stop the share because I want to get intimate here. Anybody ever get really frustrated with your staff? All of us, right? Piece of advice one of my mentors gave me is, he said, I want you to take a pen and a piece of paper, and I want you to write down every single thing that your staff does that upsets you, that frustrates you, that makes you mad. And you just write it down. Every little thing. It could be when they take the trash can out, when they take the garbage out, they don't lift it off the ground and they scrape it on the floor and it leaves a nice like wet streak mark from the soda cans that were in the bag, right? It could be something as small as that. It could be their closing percentage is at 60% and we want it to be at 80%. So you sit down and you write down every little thing that upsets you. And then next to each one, you're going to put a yes or a no. Have I trained my team consistently on how to be better at this thing? More often than not, you're going to have a lot of no's next to each line. And yesterday, I love my staff too, but there's things that they do that upset me the same way that I love my wife and I love my kid, but there's things that they do that upsets me. And yesterday we had our annual meeting for GrowPro, and this is a company all hands on deck. So all 35 of us, and we're so big that we outgrew our conference room. So the building right next door is empty. I don't have a tenant in one of the suites. So I was like, okay, well, we'll just go do it over there. So I had to rent tables. I had to rent chairs, which was like $700. We had to set everything up. We had to cater it, which was like another $600. This is an 8-hour meeting. We go all day. And this was our annual one. So we're showcasing to the team like our updated 5-year vision, our updated 3-year vision, our 1-year plan. These are all the projects that we're going to do. It's a very inspiring day. And we spend like the first 4 hours on team health and on vision. And then the next 4 hours on traction. How are we going to get there? These are the things that we're going to do in order to get there. Well, in the beginning of the meeting, I always ask them, what expectations do you have? Because at the end of the meeting, I want to know if I met their expectations. So we've just gone for like 7.5 hours, super awesome day. Everybody seems to be pumped up. And at the very end, I asked them to give me overall feedback for the day. Were your expectations met? And then rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. 1, this was a complete waste of time. It should have been an email. 10, this was amazing. I'm motivated, inspired. I know what we're doing. I know where we're going. I know how we're going to get there. So I have them discuss amongst each other because having 35 people answer that all at one time would just take too much time. So after they discussed amongst each other, what was the overall feedback of the day? Were your expectations met? And how do you rate it? I said, would anybody like to share? I'm going to pick a couple of people to share. Well, one person, boom, shot their hand up really quick. So I called on them. And here I am expecting to hear like some really positive things because as I was walking around, hearing them share, everybody was like really pumped up. And the first thing out of this person's mouth was, these are the most uncomfortable chairs that I've ever sat in my life. I could barely see the TV up front. So if we could bring in a bigger TV, Like that was the overall feedback of the day. You could see the entire energy in the room just like get deflated. And here's the thing, we have a culture of feedback. I want to hear that feedback, but what I haven't done is how to properly express your feedback. There I was also standing for 8 hours. I mean, the amount of time and energy and prep that goes into this. I also invested $1,500 so they didn't have to be like in a tight little conference room together, and we had a lot more space. Woo, that took the wind out of my sail. What does this have to do with what we're talking about? I never trained my team on how to properly give feedback. And if I would have just done a training on, hey, if you're going to give feedback in a public venue, here's kind of some of the things that you should think of. And after the meeting, we had, I want to say like 10 to 12 people come up to the leadership team, and they were like visibly upset that that was the feedback that was given. Now, fortunately, I got some amazing rock stars on the team that popped their hand up to try and turn that energy around. But it was a great reminder to myself, like, I can't even be mad at this person because I haven't trained them on how to give proper feedback in a public environment. And I don't need you to kiss my butt. Like, I don't need you. You're right. The chairs, they probably were uncomfortable, and we can do something different about that. I didn't want to ask them to wheel their chairs from one office across the parking lot to the next, so we rented the chairs. But if your team is not closing at the way, because there's a lot of you in here that have somebody else that's doing it, you've got to ask yourself what type of training, consistent training. It's not just once that you are giving them. Okay. This concept of game tape has really, really helped us. I mean, if you follow sports, you know, after the game, what do? They watch the tape. Why? They want to see what did they do well? Where do they have areas of improvement? And this is something, this is probably the fastest way to get your team really good at something. Record them practicing and then have them watch it and have them tell you what's working well and where is there room for improvement. This isn't some like hot seat where we're all just going to criticize. Okay. The other thing that you can do is you can make it a game, and you can use some form of scoreboard tracking. Hopefully in your level 10 meetings, you are tracking how many new students you signed up and what is the percentage of the students that came or the prospects that came in for an appointment that actually enrolled. And the mindset shift for me that was really helpful with this is as you start to grow and you have team members, as much effort that you put into training your students, put that into training your team. Okay. All right. I'd love to know biggest takeaway on that. Let me know in the chat what's the biggest takeaway, because if we do this, if we enhance and train the enrollment process, we're going to increase the conversion percentage, which helps us increase our revenue. If you go from closing 60 or 70% to closing 80 to 90%, your revenue instantly jumps. Okay. And you should be aiming for about 80% show to close. I think that the biggest room for improvement is typically paid trial to enrollment. Lots of people fall off, especially if you're selling a lot of paid trials and making sure that you're converting them. And you can convert them through offering incentives such as dollars off, free merch, and something like a free event coupon. So in the chat, biggest takeaway so far with what we've gone over. Let me know in the chat, what has your biggest takeaway been? Maybe it's the revenue ceiling number. Maybe it has to do with partners in education. Maybe it has to do with training your team, formulas. Each disappointment is a lack of training. Oh, that is very, very well said. I'm not training my team. Cost of acquisition, team training, put better chairs in the meeting room, right? So I had to rent these chairs, and the chairs were like $4 a pop. They did have a cushion, but it wasn't, you know, like an office chair. It's funny. All right. Hearing it again, but in a new way. Team training. Love it. Okay. Just a reminder, we cannot assume they know. We need to train more often. Great job, guys. Okay. So how else can we increase revenue? Well, we can increase the transaction size, right? And this comes with add-ons. This is, you know, your merchandise, your retail, exclusive merchandise. One of the things that not a lot of schools do that we do teach in Maya are these VIP all access passes. And this is a really great way to help increase transaction size. And all of VIP passes is you determine what the pass includes, and the family that buys it's going to get a slight discount because they are enrolling for all of these different types of things, from private lessons to paying up front for belt graduations to doing camps or birthday parties to tournaments to, if you want to include merchandise in there, or board breaking or parent night outs. This is a really, really great way to increase the transaction size. And we typically teach to do this at the holiday event, but this could be paired with upgrades when somebody is going to upgrade to another program. Okay. So we've got merchandise, we've got VIP passes, and then we do have upgrades. And this past weekend, I was in Orlando at the Maya Owners Retreat. Mrs. Smith was there, got to hang out with her, which was great. And I was talking with he's a Grow Pro client, and he's also a Maya client. And he was telling me that he used to do programs and upgrades many, many years ago. And he heard from a new consultant that was on the scene that you shouldn't do that. You should be offering month to month. So he switched, and he switched to month. And what he immediately saw was a increase in churn, people quitting and quitting much faster than they normally would do, and a decrease in revenue. And he was talking to me about now how he's gone back specifically to the Maya model of, having a basic program and then having upgrade programs. We called it the Elite program and Masters Club program. A lot of schools call it like Black Belt Club and Masters. But your upgrade programs, where I see a lot of schools, kind of miss the mark, is that they don't tie it into the initial sales enrollment. So whatever your sales process is, if you are offering upgrades, you need to future pace that family that, hey, in the future, there's going to be a time where we're nominating your child to get into our Elite program or our Masters Club program. And a lot of schools don't have this visual. Right in the beginning, Mr. Darjean was on here, and behind him, he has these, I call them menu marketing boards. It's just, and this is exactly what ours looks like. And it has a breakdown of what each of the programs mean. Okay. And you really should be aiming to upgrade 5% of your student body each month. This is going to increase the transaction size. Instead of them maybe paying you $170 a month, maybe they're now paying you $200 a month. Okay. The other thing we can do to increase the transaction size is additional family members. One of my favorite ways, and I don't hear a lot of people talk about this, to add additional family members is something that we call a parent coaches orientation. So we would host these each quarter, once a quarter, at the end of the quarter, right? So we're in Q1. You would do this at the end of March. And what you do is you invite all of the new students that have signed up at your school for that first quarter, and you invite them to a parent coaches orientation. And all this is, it's a 45-minute meeting where the parents come in. You can host it depending on the size of your school. If you have extra space or a second mat, you could host it during the week. We just did it Saturday mornings because that's what made the most sense with our schedule. And we would tell the parents that this really is like a non-negotiable that you should be coming to, because we're going to do ABCD. Well, what is ABCD? Well, what we do is we go over a little bit of the history of the company. We introduce the coaches so they can really kind of get to know them. And we basically go through our student handbook. I mean, that's really what I used, because how many people are actually reading the student handbook? I created this little Canva presentation in here with pictures of our team. And we talk about who we are, what our core values are. Why did we decide to separate our classes the way that we do with the age groups for different learning developmental stages? We go over our policies, like our behavior policy, our freeze policy, and even our bathroom policy, because put your shoes on when you go to the bathroom. That's nasty if you don't, right? So we go through all of these things, but the purpose of it is to build rapport with the parent. We also tell them that everything in the pro shop is 10% off that day. So this helps boost retail sales. And every single one of them gets a pass to come and train in our adult program. So It's a retention event, a recruiting event, and a revenue event all tied into one. And you only got to do it once a quarter, inviting all of those parents to come to the parent coach's orientation. And this is a really great way for you to start getting additional family members on the mat and into your adult program. We also do Mother's Day and Father's Day classes. We do family fun night where siblings and parents get to get on the mat. We do spar wars where the parents actually get to grapple their kids during class. And these are just all the different ways we are trying to get them onto the mat, indoctrined into our culture, and see if maybe joining our adult program is something they'd be interested in doing. So this is another way for you to increase the transaction size, because now instead of just maybe the child training, it's also the sibling and the adult. Okay. Next up, purchase frequency. This kind of goes back to how long are they staying with you, right? Do you want the frequency of their purchases just to end after 5 months or 7 months, 10 months? If we can increase that by 1, 2, 3 more months, you are drastically increasing your revenue. In order for this to happen, you have to define and enhance the certainty of success for your customers. And a question you should ask yourself is, what has to happen so the customer will say, I'd have to be crazy to do business with someone else? And this just comes down to the value that you are ultimately providing to your students. One of the best metrics for you to know how you're doing, guys, is your attrition. If you have a churn higher than 5%, this might sound harsh, but there's something that's not connecting with what's going on in your classes. And that can, sometimes we got to look in the mirror, but that can be a really hard pill to swallow, because I know a lot of instructors think they're the best instructor in the world. When you start to scale and you start to now, maybe you were the chief instructor and you're no longer, maybe you're not there during primetime classes anymore, the quality of what is offered can start to decline. Okay. So your retention rate is a really good sign of how happy people are. And there should be alarms going off if it starts to creep up over 5%. I'd love for it to be at 3% for you. And that's why I spent a good portion of the beginning on those retention metrics and the revenue ceiling, and understanding the retention versus the attrition. So if you have 97% retention, that means you have 3% attrition. And again, I'm going to drive home this point of diagnosing when they are dropping off. So I had a client, he owns Lone Star Martial Arts, and he wanted to talk about some retention strategies specific to the 9-month mark, because what he was noticing is it was very difficult to get students past orange belt, which is their 9-month mark. Okay. So I said, well, tell me some of the things that you're doing in the onboarding, because oftentimes once we get a new student, we just go and look for another student and we don't onboard that family properly and get them really involved in the school and the community. And he was knocking it out of the park for the first 6 weeks. I mean, it was like, all right, on day 1, we do this. On day 2, we do this. On day 7, we're doing this. 2 weeks in, we do this thing. It was like, I'm not going to say it was overkill, but it was a lot. And then after 6 weeks, it kind of just stopped. And there wasn't this ongoing touch point, so that by the time they're getting their orange belt, they're not getting that same level of service that they were getting the first 2 to 3 months that they were in the school. The other thing that you can look at is, once you know what that drop-off is you need to check what the curriculum is doing, right? I know for a lot of people, when sparring starts to come into the mix, sometimes there's a drop-off then. So how can you adjust your curriculum and your classes and the communication that you have with your people? Never Lose a Customer Again is the Bible on customer retention. It's by Joey Coleman. Thank you, Mr. Pullman. If you get the Audible book, just be prepared. He has a very nasally voice, but this is, probably top 10 books that a business owner should read. He also came out with Never Lose an Employee Again, which is just as good, but talks about the employee journey instead of the customer journey. Okay. We can also increase the purchase frequency by making sure that we're doing this if we want to keep them longer. We remind them why they're here with consistent content. Got to be putting content out, guys. Got to remind them every month when that, tuition bill hits their credit card or their bank account, reminding them. We got to offer events to help them connect with other people. When your students start to become friends with each other, they're going to want to stay longer. We also need to make sure that we're building an in-person and online community. That could be done with Facebook groups. You could use something like the school platform. And ultimately, we got to protect our culture at all times. I know that I've made the mistake of not firing a student as fast as I should have. There are students, if you have behavioral policies, which hopefully that you do, there might be students that are actually causing more damage and more harm being in your program than they are good. So in order to increase that purchase frequency, to keep them longer, remind them why they're there with content, offer events to have that connection, make sure you're building not only an in-person community, but also online community, and then protect the culture at all times. Last part of this goes into the 5 profit centers, which is, how can we make more money in the school? That's through new students, upgrades, retail, retention, and special events. So how often are you doing events? How often are you selling private lessons? Are you charging for belt testing? Are you doing additional things like seminars? And what I think what kind of happens, like a parent night out event, maybe you do a parent night out event and, you make $1,500 and, like $1,500 is a considerable amount of money, but you're like, is it really worth the hassle of $1,500? It's like, okay, well, what if we did that every single month? That's $18,000 to your bottom line, right? That consistency will compound. Last part of today's training. I want you to take a look at all of these brands, okay? You more than likely know every single one of these brands. And what every single one of these brands has in common is consistently increasing their prices. Curious, when was the last time, let me know in the chat, that you raised your rates? All right, Michelle says last year, every year, 3 years ago, 2024, last year, 2024, a year ago, 3 years ago. Okay, for those of you that are multiple years, I'm talking with you. For those of you that did it last year, my question then would be, well, when did you do it before that? Because oftentimes it's many, many years that are passing. And I don't know about you, but I get an email from Netflix, what feels like every 6 months, that their rates are increasing. This question is very impactful. If someone bought your business today, what is the first thing they would do? This was a question one of my coaches asked me, and my answer was they would raise our rates. And I think for some people, there's tension in doing that. And what we just have to remember is this is something you should be auditing on an annual basis. Okay. If you are doing what you should be doing, right? Which is providing unmatched value. As long as you're continuing to get better and better and better, this shouldn't be something you should shy away from. And it's not just when's the last time you raised your tuition, when's the last time you raised what you're charging on events and private lessons. For the longest time, we charged $20 for a parent night out event. I think now we're charging close to $50. When's the last time you reevaluated some of those events or seminars or private lessons? Maybe you've increased on the tuition end, but what about the other profit centers that we have in the school? And you can just ask yourself, what do you offer that your competitors don't? Do you have professional branding, testimonials, a polished facility? And are you providing unmatched value? If your retention rate is 5% or above, we got to fix some things first. Okay. When your attrition starts getting in the 1 to 2%, like it's time for you to consider raising rates if you haven't done it. Okay. So we obviously have to determine if we are in a place to do this. For those of you who said, 3 years ago, this is something that I would challenge you to at least start having the conversation with your team or your business partner or with yourself. But we really need to position it, if you are going to do it, as a reflection of quality and value. And then you would just need to determine, are you only going to raise rates for new students? Are you going to do it for current students? What we would like to do, if we did want to increase the rates for current students, is we would handle that at the renewal or at the upgrade. And you should provide notice, right, guys? That's going to be very important. But I don't think a lot of people think about tying increasing revenue to increasing not just tuition, but also the other profit centers that we are have in our school. Okay. And, one of the reasons why I absolutely love the ABCD model that we teach in terms of pricing programs is because it does offer these flexible payment options. Okay. Last thing, here's your bonus. While this will not increase your revenue, it will increase your profit. And I get more excited about profit than I do about revenue. And because we're in a new year, this is something to really make sure that you're evaluating. And it's just going line by line by line on your bank statement and your credit card statement and seeing, is there anywhere that you can cut expenses? Really also auditing the different price points, right? If you've been using the same vendor over and over again, or you've been buying the same toilet paper, you're buying the same packets of printer paper, when's the last time you just audited and checked to see if there's something cheaper? I always like trying to get 3 options. I always want 3 options. And it's just not something that is typically top of mind as a way to increase money by cutting expenses. But the everyday items, like if you have coffee that you offer your parents and you just have it on, reorder with Amazon, when's the last time you just looked to see, is there a more cost-effective option that you could get for coffee or for Windex or whatever? Okay. And could you potentially buy in bulk to save, right? We have a BJ's account, which is like Costco or Sam's Club. And we're able to save on those expenses because we buy in bulk. So it's just kind of a little bonus. It won't increase your revenue, but it will increase your profit, which I think that should get you just as excited. Okay. Here are your action steps. Calculate your revenue ceiling. Determine which of the areas you have the most room for improvement. Is it the new customers? Is it the client value? Is it reducing the churn? And then we execute. And for those of you that, I didn't put the price increase on here because it's not for everybody. And I'm not making this blanket statement that I think everybody should raise rates. But if it's something you haven't done in many, many years, it should come to the conversation. Okay. As always, if you need help with the new students, we offer a free marketing audit. You can go to growproagency.com/survey to book that marketing audit. Let me know in the chat, biggest takeaway of today's session. In the chat, biggest takeaway from today's session. Always amazing. Need to calculate revenue ceiling. Yes, ma'am. And you need to do that per location, ma'am. Don't put them, all 3 together. Awesome. Evaluate rate increase schedule. Yes, sir. 3 years. And, Master Bolts, I know you won our 30,000 students in 30 days challenge. You're not having a problem with the enrollments. That's also could be a sign as well that it's time to increase the rates. Quarterly new student meeting. Yes, the parent coaches orientation. Call it whatever you want. That's what we call it. Love it, man. You keep getting better. It's awesome. More concise and brief. Appreciate that, sir. Thank you. Great ideas how to proceed. More staff training. Yes. Awesome. Very good. Okay, guys. First training of the year is done. Now it's time for you to go execute. Always here if you guys need me. Shoot me a Facebook message. Send me an email, midgettwister@gmail.com. Make it a great day. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.